There we go. Here we go. So welcome to this episode of Unbound Women, a monthly discussion between authors at the Unbound Press, where we dive into a particular subject or focus and just see what wants to come through. And this month we're talking about how to create a writing practice that works for you, which is such a personal thing, and it can really, I feel like it can kind of ebb and flow depending on where you're at and the book that you're writing. It can shift and change from book to book. So I feel it's always helpful to hear from other writers, other women, like what's been helping them and what they've found as they've been writing. So if you don't know me, I'm Nicola Humber. I'm the founder of the Unbound Press, and I'm an author myself. I've written 3 books, and I'm joined by 3 Unbound writers today who are all at different stages of their book writing journey. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, actually, and just let us know like where you are in your writing process and a little bit about the book that you're writing or you've written. So Alison, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hi, I'm Alison, and I'm a midwife and a spirit baby intuitive, and I wasn't before I started writing my book. And basically I'm at the point where I have written my book and I feel like I'm in the betwixt and between stage, because the book is written, it's finished, but it's going through the last kind of editing and the rest of the publishing process, and it won't be ready for a few months yet. So I'm in the betwixt and between place.
You are. It's going to be coming out in the autumn, isn't it? We haven't finalized the date. Do you want to share the title of your book?
Oh, yes. So the title of the book is Baby Talk to Me, Spirit Baby Messages for the Journey to Motherhood.
Amazing. Really excited for it to make its way into the world. Thanks, Alison.
Me too. Thank you.
Dainei, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so my name is Dainei, and I'm nearing first draft stage of my book, which is dealing with the shadow and dealing with integrating when our shit arises. And what, you know, there's a lot of stuff around this now, and it's all good. So what I've done is I've made it into a kind of mythical tale, so that it's like a whole world, and in a way to make it accessible, but also in another way to be able to express it how I want to express it, rather than adhering to perhaps the accepted things. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to hear some of Dainei's book that she's been sharing her writing in the Unbound Writing Mastermind, and it's just incredible. So again, I can't wait. I can't wait to read some of it, because I've heard it and I haven't actually read it yet. So I'm looking forward to actually reading it. Yeah. Thanks, Dainei. And Ceryn.
And I'm Ceryn. I am author of 2 books. My last one, The Divine Feminist, came out 6 months ago today. It's a book half birthday today.
I didn't realize that. Yeah, congratulations.
Me either, until I looked at the calendar. I was like, this is serendipitous. So The Divine Feminist is all about reconnecting to ourselves. It's digging past what we know of as being the imbalances of the world into sort of the deeper underpinnings of patriarchy, I guess, and coming back to a place of that sacred balance and alignment for ourselves.
Amazing. And are you writing anything else at the moment, Ceryn?
I hoped you were going to avoid that one, Nicola. I was like, I'm trying to write a novel. I have had this series of novels in my brain for years, and I'm now trying to write a novel, but I'm finding that is in line with the topic of today's conversation, that is a very different process that I need, and it's one that at this point in time I'm perhaps not as disciplined and as I'd like to be with it. So I'm very, very, very slowly writing a novel.
Okay, well, it's going to be interesting with the different types of books, and like Dainei, where you're writing fiction as well. So let's dive in. And yeah, do you want to share, each of you share a little bit about your writing process, like how you approached writing, like writing the book for Ceryn, for you, writing The Divine Feminist, whatever stage you're at. Oh my God, I can't get my words out today.
One of those days.
How did you approach your writing practice? I'm going to shut up and just let you speak.
Shall I go first? So
Thanks, Ceryn.
Because mine was quite the journey. Mine, I think I went through 5 or 6 different attempts to kind of formulate a writing process. And apologies if you hear noise in the background, my dog's just popping around. And then they just didn't take hold. It was almost like sowing the seeds and then nothing was coming to fruition. And so what eventually worked for me was I just booked out, I think it was a month, or maybe it was even just 2 weeks. I just booked out a period of time, didn't take any clients, didn't do anything, and sat on a beanbag with a pen and paper and just wrote this book. And I was talking to someone the other day and I was saying, I wrote it with Schitt's Creek on in the background. And they replied and said, but why? Didn't you need silence? I was like, no, because there was some sort of inner saboteur within me that was going, you can't write this. You're not good enough to write this. So every time she started, I would go, let's just watch Schitt's Creek for 10 minutes. Let's distract her. And then we'll go back to the book. All is well now, we're good. So that was kind of me. I sat with the TV on, beanbag, pen, and a bit of paper. And that was how I finally got there.
What had you tried before, though, that wasn't, how were you writing before that, when it wasn't really gelling?
So I mean, so my first book, which was a book I wrote years ago on mediumship, and that was kind of, I don't want to say easy, but it wasn't difficult. It was, I basically wrote a giant bullet pointed list and then built out every one of the bullets. It was, you know, my background is in corporate communications. So I'm kind of used to, right, here are your key messages, now build them out into something, craft something from it. So basically that's what I did with the first book. And it was like, oh, this is easy, this is fine. So I tried to do that again. Did not work. And then tried to, would try to kind of, I did the whole thing of, I'll get up early in the morning. I'm not a morning person, so that isn't good. I'll get up early in the morning and have an hour at it every day. I will, on a weekend, I will just sit in front of the laptop. I will sit in the tent in the back garden with the laptop. And I quite quickly realized that, first of all, the laptop was not the way to write this book. This book could not come through. I mean, obviously I typed it up eventually, but it could not come through in that form it needed to be written. It felt like a different type of birthing process, I think, in that it physically came out of my body as I was sitting there. And it's only as I'm sitting here, I'm realizing that sitting on a beanbag is massively aligned with the labor process, isn't it? How interesting. Anyway,
you needed Alison there.
Yeah.
I do. So I tried that. I tried taking myself away. I go to a cabin in the woods once or twice a year. I tried going off to a cabin in the woods and it just wouldn't come. Nothing would. And I think if I look back at it now, actually, it's because the book, I'm looking at it. If I'm glaring behind the computer, it's because I'm looking at it. The book, I remember when I first signed with Unbound, one of the things you do, Nicola, is you give us access to a meditation that is to meet the spirit of your book, to meet the energy of your book. And I remember meeting her and going, whoa, she's powerful. No wonder I can't just juggle her into an hour a day. No wonder I can't just fit her around everything else. Like, she demands attention because this book is a sheer force.
Yeah.
And so I kind of I kept trying to coax her into my life to be like, oh, you can fit in here. Oh, you can fit there. And she was just like, no, this will not work, until everything else stopped other than Schitt's Creek. And I just had to sit and focus on her and let her take the wheel.
So interesting. Yeah. I think it's helpful to hear what didn't work as well, like as it is to hear about what really did work. Thanks, Ceryn. I'd like to
go next.
Yeah,
Shall I go next?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, honestly, I think I could write a book on how not to write a book.
Maybe we should do that.
Well, first, it wasn't the book I started writing. I started writing a book, very sensible book about breastfeeding. And then I would get into a bit of a meditative state, just like quiet. I'd get into my heart space. And it was just channeled writing, if you like. You know, it was just automatic writing. And then I'd go back to it and read it and think, this isn't a book about breastfeeding, is it? So then I just thought, all right, do you know what? I'm just going to trust this. So and actually the first part, which was the channeled messages really from the spirit babies, was the easy part. But it was like, I'm a midwife. I cannot take spirit baby messages to the world. They think I'm crazy. So then I thought, okay, I have to put a bit of my experience then as a midwife. And that sort of began to slow me up a bit more then. And then I was thinking, right, okay, I think that's finished. And then it was like, I don't think people are going to believe what I've written. So then I went on this journey of research. I was trying to research lots of the things that were written in the book. So if someone had said to me, you're going to be writing a book, which is fully channeled from the baby spirit realm, and it's fully referenced, I just wouldn't have done it. So it's like they gave it, so it was given to me in parts, but the part where I had to write about, you know, my own experience as a midwife and bringing all that together, and then bringing the research together, that was really tough. And there were moments of I just can't do this. It's just too hard. Why was it so easy? Now it's so hard. And the things that I would say to people is, you know, just keep writing. Just don't worry about what it's going to come out like. Just keep writing, and eventually it will come together, which is exactly what happened for me. And towards the end, I was really procrastinating, because the worst bit is the reading it so many times over and over and over and over. Every time you look at it, you think, I've read that and there's a mistake. And then I actually asked somebody to help me with some energy work, because I was really procrastinating. And I had worked through a lot of fears about this book. You know, this was not the book I was writing. And suddenly I was really going to be exposing myself as a midwife. I've turned the belief of, I can't possibly do this, they'll strike me off, this is a terrible thing for a midwife to bring out, it's irresponsible. And I've turned it on its head to, well, actually, what if it needs to be a midwife, for it to be taken seriously? Exactly. So I've completely turned it on its head, but it's been a lot of work. So the writing practice was very bitty. You know, weeks I'd write, weeks I wouldn't write for. Then 4 months would go by, but I was really beating myself up. Come on, you should be writing this book. So then I just thought, I just have to when I feel like writing, I write. And when I don't feel like writing, I don't write. And I had to take the pressure off and just think, it will come when it's ready. But the procrastination at the end was really tough. And then I worked with somebody who said, what about if you just do 20 minutes a day? That's all we're asking, 20 minutes. So I did 3 days of 20 minutes, then it was an hour, then it was 4 hours. And before I knew it, I was kind of doing editing of like 12 hours a day with short breaks. So it was, so honestly, how not to write it, but
well, you've done it,
and I finished it.
Perfect. It is perfect, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. And I love you mentioned that piece, how you reframed, like, oh, I can't write this, I'm a midwife, and then it's like, no, this is exactly why I'm being called to write this. And it makes me think, like, with Unbound Writing, one of the prompts that we use, or to reframe that, like, oh, who am I to do this? We actually ask that question, like, who are you to do this? Why are you the perfect person to do this? And like, that really illustrates that point. So
it really is such a journey.
Oh my God, yeah. Thanks, Alison. Dainei, quite the journey.
Quite the journey. I'm totally resonating with that. Yeah. So first of all, I was writing a completely different book, about samskaras, which is yogic speak for entanglements and blockages and things of your prana. And but what happened was, and you know, the saboteur was, which I always knew because I used to write poetry or kind of like little short pieces all through my life. So I've got lots and lots of old journals and things like that. So I knew that I could get away with so much, but then it was like committing to this these bigger chunks, and of committing to really speaking. And then so the saboteur came in big time, and I literally was like a battle. And it was weird because one of the samskaras that I was going to write about became the totality of this thing that I've ended up writing about. So it's like the biggest one kind of went, you know, and so it has been a bit of a battle, but I'm winning because now, so I was writing in small bits, and then, as you know, as you said, Alison, like sometimes 2 or 3 weeks, and it'd be like, no, there's almost like a force field around it, and I couldn't also walk away either. I couldn't say, oh well, it's obviously not for me or anything like that. There was this literal, you know, like magnetism, and yeah, so, and then, but gradually now that's at the center, and I'm really speaking. And even some of the things that I wrote in the beginning, I thought I probably won't put that in, but I just need to write it. And I'm thinking, I'm bloody well putting that in. And you know what I mean? It's like really, it's just, the whole thing has evolved, and it's made me very happy because now I'm flowing. And but it has taken a couple of years. It doesn't have to be like that for everybody, but that's my particular thing. And I suppose as far as a writing practice is, because I've allowed it to be the center, I'm now no longer worried about exact amounts of time that I'm doing it. I know that it's that I'm in right relationship with it now, rather than it. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah. So as the book has shifted, and like Ceryn, you spoke to this, but I'm interested, like Alison and Dianes, as your book has shifted from what you thought it was at the beginning to what it became or what it's becoming, has like the way you write, has that changed as well? Like, I know you spoke about like the little chunks and maybe it's expanded, but you know, has it shifted from I don't know, even things like writing by hand to typing, or vice versa? Like, have there been any shifts there as the book has changed, or not?
Well, towards the end, I started to do more on the computer. So initially, I did a lot of writing. I couldn't do it. It was just like Ceryn said about it, just wouldn't come through. It had to be a pen and paper, because that's how it flowed out. It doesn't flow in the same way at the computer. But when I was doing finishing it up and doing the research parts, that was actually easier to do on the computer, moving the words around, and that was easier. But it was the automatic write. It's like that's how it had to flow out, that part.
So even when you thought it was a book about breastfeeding, you were writing by hand, and then that's how it just started to come.
Yeah, that's how it came through. And then by the end, when I was bringing it all together, there was more doing it straight onto the computer, because also I thought, gosh, you're writing it by hand, then you're putting it all, you know, it's a lot of work. I mean, I really, all credit to anyone who writes a book. I mean, it's really quite a lot of your life is taken up. So
yeah,
and I had totally underestimated how that would be. Just write a book. Yeah, right. Good luck.
A friend of mine finished.
I've done it.
A friend of mine finished writing and submitted her book last week, and she sent me a message, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something along the lines of trying to craft genius to a deadline and within a word count is very, very difficult, and I don't really know how I've managed it. And I just thought, I read it and thought, it's so true, isn't it? Because we have this idea of what a book should be, whatever our book is going to be. We also have this overarching idea of what a book will be. And you read, I'm sure, you know, all of us are probably to some extent voracious readers, which is why we write.
Yeah.
And so you thought, there's a part of you who's like, this will be easy. It's just putting one word after the other. It'll be fine. It's not. It's and that, I don't say that to put anybody off, because it's it is the most rewarding thing I think I've ever done. But, and you know, I'll do it again, and we'll all do it again, I'm sure, but it's not as easy as one word after the next, that's for sure.
No. Well, I feel it can be, like you said with your first book, Ceryn, like when they're saying it's quite straight, you know, it's just like, oh, I'm going to share this information, and you can just write something and put it out there. It's when we're writing something that really comes from that unbound place, like from our soul, like from, you know, it's that like true essence of what we're meant to be sharing. That's when it can feel more challenging, like we have to go to our edges to actually bring it through. Yeah, but to do that to a deadline is quite tricksy, because those books don't want to have a deadline.
Yeah, it's so funny because I had a date in my head. I said, it's definitely going to be ready. It's definitely going to be ready on this date. And then it wasn't ready. And I was so disappointed. It was a couple of weeks after that date. And of course, Nicola was like, yeah, well, come on, it's ready. And I'm thinking, goodness me, I'm a midwife. Why did I think an estimated date was going to work? Estimated dates never work. They always go beyond. You know, what was I thinking? So it has felt like a birthing in some ways, a really, really long labour.
That's so funny because you actually write about that in your book as well, about the dates. So I mean, Dainei, how about for you? Because like your process.
I had to write through lots of different voices, through lots of different conditioning, educated, for better or worse, ways of, language, to find the true language that was like a mixture of everything, and something that I was actually wanting to say. So that I found that quite that was hard, because I had to keep persevering, because I was thinking, right, I want to say this, and then when I written it, I thought, oh, but I haven't said it. I just what was that? And then gradually, it's like chipping away. That voice or that writing started to come out, and I have done it all on the computer because I like to be able to change everything around, and that's probably, or might be, because I'm doing drawings for mine, and so I've got that contact with color and paper and ink and everything already, and so that might be what satisfies that. And I never did stuff on the computer before. It was always in little books, writing, but I'm finding, because it's such a big thing, I can move it around easily. If I've got lots of different bits of paper, well, for instance, there's something that looks a bit like that.
Yeah.
You get a little bit like, where was that? Whereas if it's on the computer, like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
That pile is definitely familiar. There's like, you think it's very neat, wouldn't it? Just put it all in one A4 folder and just write it. It's just like, it doesn't happen like, oh, I've got some insight, I'll just write this here while I'm sitting on the bus, or
No, I've got post-it notes at the moment that I'm writing. They're just all over the place. It's like, I need to get this all in one place. One of the keys with Unbound writing, one of the kind of practices or principles, is to bring pleasure into the writing process. And we've talked a lot about the challenges. I wonder if there are ways that you've made your writing practice more pleasurable.
So I would often take myself off to the woods, or I would sit in nature and sit on the grass and just see what wanted to come at the beginning, just see what wanted to come through. So it really meant that I did get back with nature, because I found it was easy to write out. I don't know, I seemed to have better connection when I was outside. So I kind of went on little day trips around the place, thinking, I need to write, so I need to go away for a day or two, or an afternoon. That was fun.
Yeah. And actually writing out in nature as well.
Yeah.
Oh, gorgeous. Yeah. Love that. Thanks, Alison.
I had a daily trip to the woods as well. I didn't write there because I obviously had Callie with me, but I would go out to the woods every morning and just be like, okay, this is the opening up, this is the connection. And then often we ended the day with another trip to the woods as well. So often during that period of time that I was really intently writing, we would kind of I would bookend the day with trips to the woods, just to like you say, Alison, just to connect, I think, just to be in with nature.
Would you notice ideas coming when you're out, or
massively?
That was for me as well.
Me too. I've been writing. I'm quite close to nature here, which is quite good, but I have been taking my laptop out and just finding little spots, but also in cafes. And if I hear little sound bites of other people all around me, it kind of sometimes stimulates, and sometimes even synchronistically kind of starts to all weave in together. So I found that really enjoyable. And no matter how noisy it is, it still doesn't, it's almost as though that's giving me energy rather than distracting me. So I found that very pleasurable. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. because I kind of feel like I need silence when I'm writing. I don't even have music on, but I will like always kind of go out in nature and go for a walk like before writing if I can. But then there have been times when I've been writing in cafes, and yeah, I guess it does kind of spark off a different quality when you're in that environment. So interesting. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the writing environment. Like, yeah, obviously at times, like maybe going out into nature or cafes, but like your writing environment at home, what is that like? Is there anything kind of special, or are there any special ways that you set up your space for writing?
Well, when I was doing the, automatic writing, when I realised where it was coming, because had to get very like, where's this information coming from? And then that set me on a whole journey of, well, what is this? Who are they? Where is this coming from? And so by the end, I would like a little candle, and I would have a little unicorn, because that's how I sort of identified. It felt like the magic of what was coming out on the page. So I would do that each time. And it was quite a mess around me, so I'd have to clear it a bit beforehand. But often it was towards the end, it was, there was lots, when I was finishing up, there were lots of activity in the house, which was a bit off-putting at times. But so I used to light the candle, and just I don't know, it kind of centered me a little bit as well when I was writing at home.
Love that.
But it wasn't a specific room or anything. I was kind of in the hub of the house. Which is maybe why there was some delays, because it's like, will you not just be quiet and let me do this?
But this is the thing, isn't it? Like, how often do we get like that what we would think is like the perfect writing conditions, where there's nothing going on in our lives, like we've got a whole place to ourselves. It just doesn't happen. So we just have to kind of find the best way with what we have, which it sounds like you absolutely did, Alison.
And I mean, I live on my own, so I do have that I don't have that distraction. And to be honest, I think I would have relished having more noise around. There were times when I would quite often pack up and go to my mum and dad's, because I'd just be like, I just need somebody, I just need something around, so it's not just me, Callie, and this book. But I used to I echo the candle piece. I used to have a particular candle that I burned every time I sat down to write. And I think I finished it around Christmas time. So the book came out in November and I finished it around Christmas time. So that felt quite powerful. And there's a particular album on Spotify that I would listen to as I was kind of getting myself ready. That's all sort of light language and crystal balls and things. And I would just have the music, the candle, kind of sit down and center for a few minutes and just get in that space of connection and then go. It felt like a bit of a ritual process. Well, it was a bit of a ritual process every day.
Yeah. I remember interviewing Lisa Lister once about writing. It was for the Magical Portal project, which I ran a couple of years ago with different writers. And that's one thing she said. She said, we almost have to trick ourselves into writing sometimes, and we just have to ritualize the shit out of it. And she's like talking about like the music and the candles, like whatever you need to kind of trick yourself into actually sitting down and writing. So I love that. Oh, how about you, Dainei?
Yeah, so I've got my my corner, which is the corner that had the force field around it that I couldn't come towards, and it's in my spare room. And at one point, the door slammed shut, and a whole bunch of stuff that had been completely quiet had fallen across it, and I couldn't even I had to push the door to get. It was really, it's like poltergeist stuff. But now I'm in here, and so I've got all my drawings there.
Oh wow.
For the book, and so I've got this real positive feedback loop, and that's what gets. I just only have to sit in this chair and kind of go like that and go, there we go. So I've got it all going on, and that's that.
I think you've managed to get. We've spoken about that kind of poltergeist energy when Dainei's going into cafes and there's all sorts of things happening. So kind of creative energy is causing mayhem.
Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah, let's talk about some of the sabotage. I'm going, okay, this is getting ridiculous,
Oh, I love how you've moved through it. I mean, I'm a big fan of writing in bed, actually. If I can be lying down, then that's perfect with a notebook or a laptop. Yeah, I do a lot of writing.
I just thought of something else I did actually, and I would just record it on my phone. So I'd talk into it, record it on the phone, and then it was written, and it was easier to just transfer it from the notes on my phone onto my computer.
That's a great point.
I forgot I did that, but I did that at times because I did find it quite a chore to write it all, and of course it wasn't all written in the way it was ended up being. It was like bits here and bits there, and moving it around and shifting it so many times. But that I did do that quite a bit, actually, talking when something came through. If I was like, oh, I've got 5 minutes, I'll just see what's come through. I would just record it, and then because then the words were written, and I could just transfer it over. So I forgot I'd done that. But
thanks for saying that, because that's a really helpful point. I quite often do that if I'm out like on a walk, or I haven't got a notebook with me. I'll just kind of, and an idea comes through, because I've learned I kind of always used to think, oh, it's fine, I'll remember it like word for word when I get back, and I never do. And I always trust that, you know, whatever needs to come back will come. But yeah, it's helpful just to be able to like do a quick voice note and get that down. Yeah.
And I suppose that could work really well for people if they've got a busy family. You get 5 minutes just to speak into it, you know, because it does take time to write it and then write it up again, you know, on the computer.
Jo Gifford, who's one of our authors and also one of our team members, that's the way pretty much she wrote like her book Brilliance Unboxed, with voice notes, because there was just so much going on. Like first thing in the morning when she was getting ready, she would just record voice notes, and yeah, that was pretty much it. So yeah, it's a really great way to approach it. I want to just talk about like the cyclical nature of your writing practice. Like I think you've all kind of mentioned how like your writing practice would change and shift over time, and there would be periods of time when nothing was happening, and then other times where you would come back to your book. And, you know, again, that's another key aspect of the Unbound writing approach, that we kind of allow that rather than like trying to force the writing. But I just wonder how you manage that, like the times when it feels like nothing's coming. How is that for you?
Well, it can be incredibly frustrating, really frustrating. I've put the time aside for this and nothing's coming, or it's not flowing, or it's, I mean, you know, there were times I just thought, oh, why am I doing this? Why? This is really hard. This is like the hardest thing I've ever done. And then I'd have to just walk away, and then it would, you know, and then maybe an hour later you try again and something would come. So it was trusting it, really, I think. And for me it definitely was. It felt like, you know, 3 months on, 3 months off. There were times it was, you know, the cycles were as big as that. I can't be bothered, I don't want to, I can't be bothered, sort of thing.
I think that trust is such a key piece.
Yeah,
and like probably the hardest piece of the whole process.
Yeah. And that feeling of not being able to control it, which is always the difficult thing, isn't it? And not I couldn't see the end. It's like, will this ever end? How much more do I have to put into this? Will it ever end?
Yeah.
And then eventually it does end.
Exactly. You're proof of it.
Yeah. It does end.
You've got that proof.
And it's a lovely feeling when you're finished. Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks, Alison.
So I in the beginning I was struggling with my cycles a lot. So when I would have a creative sort of surge, I quite often couldn't do anything at all, and so that was very frustrating. And I would be in a battle, and in a cycles went round. It was almost though each time something softened, and now that's, I'm past that now, and that allows me now to trust when it's quiet, because then I know it's brewing or
Yeah.
incubating, so that's good now, because I'm no longer in the battleground of initiating this whole process.
Yeah, so helpful to hear like each of you speaking about it as well, because I think it helps to build that sense of trust for anyone like listening or watching. It's like, oh, okay, like this is a normal part of the process. Yeah. How about you,
I
Ceryn?
think it's, for me, it's one to an extent I think I still struggle with, I've actually realized recently that I've stopped tracking when writing flows easily, whether that be for a book, whether that be for a blog post, whatever it is, compared to when it doesn't. And actually that for me is so helpful throughout the year, throughout the month, because there are such clear patterns, and it's such a mine of, well, I found it for me such a mine of information to keep on top of that, to track that, so that I know when to, as you said, Alison, when to just kind of go, yeah, not today. Today is not the day. Today is a day that I will go and do something else, or whatever it may be. It's just that kind of stepping back on the days that no, it's not going to work today, and then really leaning in on the days that it is, and almost kind of hunkering down and going, right, let's go, we've got 12 hours, we can just, the flow is going to be there, let's go with it. And it's still, and I'm saying this, I think this is perhaps why I put my hand up to be involved with this unknowingly, that I think this is something I need to remember right now. It's something I always need to remember, that's the way I work. I would argue to some extent or another, that's the way we all work. We've just been told that we don't.
When you were tracking it, can you remember any particular patterns, like times when you felt most able to write?
So I tend to be really good at writing on days kind of 2, 3, 4, 5 of my cycle. When I'm kind of deep in the cave, I'm just like, no one talk to me, I'm writing, thank you. But when I'm ovulating, just do it. I'm too busy, as you said, Dainei, I'm too busy kind of, I'm out, I'm doing this. The creative energy is too much and I can't pin it down to actually write it. It's almost like I'm trying to catch it. And then, but through the year as well, I always remember Lisa Lister talking about how, her writing process was always winter. She would go into a cave in winter and write a book. I mean, I guess she probably still does. And given that I could write so much more easily when I bleed, I was like, well, that'll make sense. It correlates. Sure, it does not make sense, does not work for me. So my birthday's at the start of February. It's just after in bulk. And I find that my best time for being creative over long stretches is kind of in bulk to about nowish, in bulk to sort of May, June-ish. That's a really good time for me to be creative. And the other times there's just stuff, there's stuff kind of percolating, there's stuff incubating, and I just have to let it flow a little bit. So massively. And it's almost those cycles within cycles as well. It's because I'm not going to wait until next February to knuckle down and write the next book. I'm not like, oh damn, I missed my window. But equally, that there are times when I do have to just go, this month this is not going to work, so we'll put a pause on it till next month. It's fine, we'll focus on something else. Absolutely. It's a really fine balance, I think.
It is. And again, I think it can all like shift and change over time, and also with different books and whatever we're creating. So
it's interesting listening to you there, Ceryn, because I thought, oh, maybe I was in a cycle, but I didn't realize it. And it seems that the 2 years that it took me to write it, I mean, obviously it didn't take me 2 years to write it. I was a lot of gaps, not doing anything. But it was the November to February time where I seemed to be more creative. So I hadn't thought about it until now when you just said it. I thought, oh, that's so interesting, isn't it? So different time to you. Yeah.
And when we talk about those gaps, it's like, oh, when nothing's happening, like there is always something happening. That is all part of the process. And like Diane, you spoke to trust that something is brewing. And even if that is for like a month or longer, like once you're in process with your book, like there is always something happening, even if it's not like actively writing. So I think that's kind of a helpful point, kind of like we're coming towards the end of the conversation. Like we're talking about the writing practice, but it's not all about like actually writing, like the spaces in between are just as important as well. I need to remind myself of that, so that's why I'm saying it. There's been a lot of spaces in my current writing process. It's mostly space right now.
And also, I mean, I'm certainly not, but you know, that lots of people, that's their main job. They're writers. I was trying to fit it in along with everything else, working, and then there was COVID. You know, I was working really hard as a midwife during, you know, there was months, nothing, because there was so much else going on in the world. So,
well, that's it. That's it. Like I said, we haven't always got those perfect conditions to write it. So. Thank you all so much for sharing today, like what's worked for you and also what hasn't, because like I said, I feel that can be just as powerful. Before we go, it would be great to hear how people can connect with each of you. What's the best way for them to find out a little bit more about the magic you're making in the world? So,
on Facebook, you'll catch me as Alison Shaloe, baby spirit intuitive and healer, and my Instagram is Alison Shaloe or spirit baby communication.
Fantastic.
She says.
Yeah.
That's how you'll get me. And just to end, I'd just like to say, just be kind to yourselves in the writing.
I love that. Yeah, so important. Thanks, Alison.
So I'm at Ceryn Rowntree on pretty much everything, Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn nowadays. I'm dabbling over there. Ooh. Or CerynRowntree.com is the website. And thank you so much for this conversation. It's been incredibly nourishing. Thank you, Nicola.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for being part of it, Ceryn. Thank you. Dainei.
And yeah, I'm on Facebook, Dainei. I think I'm on Instagram as well, but I haven't been posting as much as I possibly could. And so I'm not so yeah, Facebook for now, and then I think I'll try to be more media visible. I do find it hard, but that's, yeah, and I'm going to change my website, so I think the Facebook thing's probably because it's just the name that's on here, Dianes Tracy, so
easy.
That's one, yeah.
We could have a whole other conversation about social media and writing and all of that. So we will.
I'm feeling slightly triggered at the moment.
I know. It's like,
I didn't know we had to do this bit.
I could feel some shame around like not being on Instagram enough, and it's totally like pick what works for you. You don't have to be on all the things.
I know. Yes, but I mean, you should go on sometime, shouldn't you?
Wow. No.
Overrated.
Be unbound, Dainei. Be unbound.
Exactly.
So, that'll be my message then.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll find me there. Maybe not.
Who knows? Oh, amazing. Well, thank you all so much. I've loved having this conversation. And for those watching or listening, like, we'd love to hear from you, kind of what the conversation sparked off for you. And if you've got any questions about creating a writing practice that feels good for you, that kind of enables you to write your book, please do share them below this episode. But yeah, we'll see you again soon for another episode of Unbound Women. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.